Welcome to Apex Formula, where strategy meets action.
There's something holding you back that you can't see or clearly point to. It doesn't look like a big obstacle. It doesn't show up as obvious failure. And it doesn't block you outright. Instead, it works quietly. It shows up in hesitation, in second-guessing yourself, in moments where you lower your goals without even noticing. You feel capable of more. You know it deep down, yet you still stop short. This barrier doesn't shout. It whispers. And that's why it's so effective. Most people think they're stuck because they lack discipline, confidence, motivation, or opportunity. But that's rarely the real reason. The thing limiting your potential isn't outside of you. It's internal, it's psychological, and it's tied to the patterns you've been repeating for years without realizing it. You've lived this more times than you can count. You get excited about a new idea or direction, and then the energy fades. You know exactly what the next step is, but you delay. You want real change, yet you stay with what's familiar, even when it clearly isn't working anymore. You plan, organize, prepare, and then nothing happens. And when things go quiet, there's that familiar frustration, the feeling that you're not living at the level you know you're capable of. This isn't laziness. It's not a lack of ambition. It's something deeper, something that kicks in before you consciously make a choice. That something is an internal behavioral pattern that quietly decides how far you allow yourself to go. Over time, your mind learns what feels normal, how much success feels acceptable, how much progress feels safe, how much responsibility, visibility, or change feels tolerable. These limits aren't logical. They're emotional. They come from past experiences, from moments where things didn't go well, from times you felt embarrassed, rejected, or overwhelmed. Even if you barely remember those moments, your behavior remembers them. So when you start moving beyond what feels normal, resistance shows up. You stall. You feel tired for no clear reason. You overthink simple actions. You distract yourself. You choose comfort over progress. Not because you're weak, but because your system is trying to pull you back to what it already knows. Here's what most people miss. This barrier doesn't stop you by pushing you backward. It stops you by keeping you still. And staying still has a cost. Most people imagine failure as something loud, a big mistake, a dramatic collapse. But this kind of barrier doesn't work like that. It causes quiet losses, weeks where nothing really moves, months where you stay busy but don't advance, years where you feel productive yet somehow end up in the same place. Nothing feels wrong enough to fix, yet nothing truly improves. You don't lose all at once. You lose gradually, through hesitation, delay, and staying just inside what feels safe. Over time, that stillness starts shaping your self-story. You adjust your goals downward to avoid discomfort. You stop aiming where it might stretch you. You quietly adopt ideas like, "I'm just not consistent," or "I always start strong and fade," or "I get close but never quite break through." Eventually, the pattern doesn't just affect what you do. It influences how you think about yourself. The tragedy isn't that people lack ability. The tragedy is that people confuse a learned pattern with a permanent limit. The barrier is not your capacity. It's an internal behavioral pattern. Your life can't grow beyond the patterns you keep running. If your pattern is inconsistency, your actions will quietly undermine consistency. If your pattern treats stress as normal, you'll recreate stress even when life becomes calm. If your pattern expects near success instead of real breakthroughs, your decisions will line up with that expectation. You're not stuck because you can't do more. You're stuck because you keep falling back into the same responses. This is why even very smart, capable people get trapped. Intelligence doesn't protect you from patterns. Awareness alone doesn't either. In fact, smart people often become very good at explaining why they're stuck instead of changing it. They analyze, they plan, they wait for conditions to be perfect. Meanwhile, the pattern stays in control. These patterns work like an internal thermostat. They regulate what feels familiar. When your actions start producing results that feel too different, resistance kicks in. Doubt increases, energy drops, distractions appear. Not because you're failing, but because your system hasn't adjusted yet. That's why so many people slow down right when things start working. Another reason this barrier is so hard to notice is because it disguises itself as logic. It sounds reasonable. It tells you you're just being careful, realistic, or responsible. It tells you to wait a little longer, prepare a bit more, think it through again. On the surface, none of that sounds wrong. In fact, it often sounds smart. But over time, that reasonable delay quietly becomes avoidance. This is why so many people feel busy but unchanged. They're always thinking, planning, refining, adjusting. They're not doing nothing. They're doing everything except the one step that would actually move them forward. And because effort is involved, it feels like progress, even when it isn't. The pattern stays intact while giving you the illusion of movement. This also explains why advice alone rarely works. You can understand exactly what you should do and still not do it. You can watch videos, read books, save notes, and feel inspired, yet remain in the same place. Knowledge doesn't break patterns. Action does. And not big action. Small action taken at the exact moment resistance shows up. So why does this invisible barrier exist at all? Because your brain prefers what it knows. Familiar feels safe, even when familiar isn't good. Growth feels uncertain. It feels exposed. It feels like something could go wrong. So your mind quietly pulls you back. One bad experience can be enough to lock this in. One failure. One moment where you felt embarrassed or out of control. Your brain learns, let's avoid that. Over time, that reaction becomes a habit. The habit becomes a pattern. And your daily life, your routines, your environment, the people around you, keeps reinforcing it. That's how the internal ceiling forms, not like a wall you crash into, but like a comfort limit you slow down near. You see it when things are going well, and you suddenly lose momentum. When progress is real, but you hesitate. When an opportunity appears, and you almost take it, but don't. When you settle for good enough, even though you know you could do more. That's not a discipline problem. That's an old pattern trying to stay in control. How to break the invisible barrier. The good news is this. Patterns aren't permanent. They're learned. And anything learned can be replaced. You don't break this barrier by pushing harder or waiting for motivation. You break it by noticing the moment you want to pull back and acting anyway. Even a little. Especially a little. Small actions matter because they teach your brain something new. I can handle this. For example, think about exercise. You've been meaning to start again. You know exactly what to do. Put on your shoes and go for a short walk. But every evening, the same hesitation shows up. I'm tired. I'll do it tomorrow. Maybe after one more thing. Instead of arguing with those thoughts, you just put on your shoes and step outside. That's it. No full workout required. You can come back after 5 minutes if you want. But you acted. And your brain registers something important. We moved despite the resistance. Or think about that side project you keep postponing. You open your laptop, but instead of starting, you start scrolling. The pattern whispers, "You're not ready yet." This time, you set a timer for 5 minutes and write one paragraph or sketch one idea. Nothing polished, just movement. Most days, once you start, you keep going. But even if you stop at 5 minutes, you've already interrupted the old pattern. Another common example is reaching out for an opportunity. You draft the message, reread it 10 times, and never hit send. The pattern says, "What if they think it's weird?" Next time, you notice that feeling and send it anyway, without rereading it again. Or you shorten it to one simple sentence if that feels safer. The point isn't perfection. It's proving to yourself that sending is possible. The same applies to visibility and fear of speaking. Instead of waiting until you feel confident, you volunteer to speak for just 2 minutes in the next meeting. Small exposure, low risk. Your system learns something new. Visibility doesn't equal danger. Each time you move despite hesitation, the old pattern weakens. Each time you stay instead of retreating, your comfort zone expands. Discomfort stops feeling like danger and starts feeling like progress. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel manageable. What once felt impossible starts to feel normal. And don't wait until you feel confident. Confidence doesn't come first, it comes after. Waiting until you feel ready only strengthens the old pattern. Action rewires the pattern. Confidence follows action. This doesn't require a dramatic life overhaul. It starts with small, deliberate decisions. Answering the message instead of avoiding it. Posting the update instead of overthinking it. Starting the task for 5 minutes instead of waiting for the perfect mood. Saying no to the comfortable distraction and yes to the slightly uncomfortable step. Raising your standard just a little instead of settling again. These moments seem small, but they compound. They create evidence, and evidence changes patterns. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not missing something everyone else has. You've simply been running an internal behavioral pattern that no longer fits where you're trying to go. Once you see that, things shift. You stop fighting yourself. You stop shrinking. You stop confusing what feels familiar with what's actually right for you. You begin responding differently, not perfectly, but consistently. This is where momentum really starts, not with a dramatic transformation, but with quiet, repeated choices. Over time, those choices stack. The old pattern fades, a new one takes its place, and the invisible barrier disappears, not because you smashed through it, but because you moved beyond it. If you're ready to break the internal ceiling that's been quietly shaping your life, subscribe to Apex Formula. In the next video, we'll break down the hidden behavioral pattern behind the bad decisions you keep repeating and show you how to finally change it.
Subscribe to Apex Formula for the next step in optimizing your life and unlock the mindset, systems, and strategies that turn potential into real, measurable progress. Stay focused, stay evolving, and we'll see you in the next video.